Hi, I'm George Cao, and today I'm talking with Sonia White. We're going to be talking about an important topic for parents who unfortunately need to separate. I know it's a tough topic, but it's such an important one because kids are involved, and of course, the parents themselves have a lot to deal with as well. How do we deal with that kind of situation in a much more holistic and thoughtful way? First, Sonia, I just want to say hi to you. Thanks for being here for this.
Hi.
Yeah, and I let me share your kind of bio background, and then we're gonna get into this topic.
Sure.
So, Sonia White helps women at all stages of a divorce manage the heartache, trauma, and the logistics, so that they can bring themselves and their children through this situation unscarred, safe, happy, healthy, and whole. She uses a method called Conscious Uncoupling, which is a five-step program. And it's a foundation for any woman who wants to create a life after a divorce, which inspires and is valuable and makes a positive difference in the world for themselves and their children. Sonia has dedicated the last decade in training in meditation, yoga, emotional intelligence, forgiveness, relationships, and has a global coaching practice working with her clients virtually using Zoom. So, and Sonia, you're a member of my Master Heart business mentoring group. So it's
I
great
am.
to have you there. Um, so this is, of course, a situation where nobody wants to get into, but the reality is many people have to do it, divorce. And when there are children involved, it is particularly hard. What kind of inspired you? I mean, so if people didn't do the conscious uncoupling process, if people did the mainstream or typical process, what usually happens? Just kind of give us a sense of why is conscious uncoupling such an important process to undergo instead of just doing it through, all right, I'm going to go to my lawyer now, and we're going to fight this out. And yeah, what's the
Well,
typical experience like?
that's exactly what you've just highlighted there. In that, when someone is facing a divorce in their life, the obvious things are to sort of, oh, let me think about what kind of a lawyer or mediator I'm going to choose. What kind of financial situation person do I need to have in my life? And there are forms, there are structures, and there are systems for both the legal, the financial, and the co-parenting, depending on where you live in the world. But what isn't being handled, and what these structures are not designed to actually accommodate for, are the heartache, the trauma, and the disruption that goes on in the family as it's going through a divorce, but also moving forward with everybody's life in the family after the divorce. If you're seriously emotional in a divorce, you've got feelings of betrayal or jealousy or rage, grief, or these can cause you to behave in ways, sometimes ways that you don't even recognize who you are, or it kind of brings out a side of you that maybe needs to be dealt with. But it can cause such damage in the divorce process. People are spending so much money fighting. Oh, suddenly the father is a bad father and he shouldn't have any access to the children. And you can get stuck in that. And we all probably know of situations where people spend months arguing over a chair. And even years later, I should have got that chair, I should have got that painting. And they're holding on to things and behaving in ways that they would never have done in the romantic phase of that, when they were still in love with each other, or honestly with anybody else. And it can often happen that as you're going through a divorce, if you're the one that's, the divorce is happening and someone has told you, let's get a divorce, then there's this time lag that goes on because that person's already started processing the leaving and may already have got an exit strategy in place, and you don't. And this is what happened with me. And I know I definitely did a part of this where, because I couldn't handle the rate of change, because I was scared, because my future terrified me so much, it was my instinct at that time to sort of freeze and to hold everything in a pattern. and stay in limbo as my way of coping. And what that does, well, it doesn't help. It didn't help me really to deal with that. It didn't help the family to do, because we just don't know where we are and what's the situation. But we were also, it's expensive. Me not showing, not filling out forms on time, and all of those kinds of things. And this is entirely normal behavior. If you're in shock when a marriage is ending, and you're being told that this is what is going on, or somebody else is now in the picture that you never even knew about. The other part is that we do lash out, and with men especially, when they want to end a relationship, sometimes the only way that a lot of men, I'm not saying all men, know, is to become angry and to become hateful, and to not see their partner in a holistic way for all of the good that they are, and still are in that relationship. But that's their way of breaking up. And a lot of those words, they can create damage that carries on for years, even decades after, and they're harmful. So the other thing is that no legal system, financial system, is going to give you the self-esteem and the self-trust that you are capable of moving forward into a new relationship. And that involves being able to close out the relationship. We can have, well, in Singapore law, I received an email to say that my 25-year marriage was open. And that was a really bizarre email for me to open, because I was not expecting it to be that way. But there is a piece of paper saying this contract is ended. However, there are many other contracts that we engage in when we are in a relationship, and they're very subtle, and they're very often non-verbal. You're going to be my best friend. You are my soulmate. You are the one and only in my life. Now, if you have that contract, what's going to happen when this divorce is final and he's moved forward, but you're still holding on to a contract like that? You can't possibly move forward until you've figured all of these little contracts out and then moved on. We have contracts around, well, you're going to be the one that supports me, not emotionally, physically, financially, in all of those ways. And they're kind of tricky, some of them. You don't realize you've got them going on, but they can really hold you back. And you can't go on because you get stuck. You don't dare even try to move forward. And there is even biology associated with divorce as you're going through a breakup. I don't know if you knew this, George, but when a breakup happens, ego, that part of your mind, considers that this is an unsafe situation, and it actually floods your system. Hormones are flooding through your system, actually causing you to go back. Better the devil you know, rather than this unknown enters a space that we're in. And so there's a very strong draw to go back, and it's actually biological. And sometimes you hear of these situations where he's beating, why are you there is actual biology to it. And when you know things like that, and people don't talk too much about that, you can realize you almost have to go cold turkey in the initial stages of a divorce, so that these hormones can sort of fade away, and you can then start to engage and not be pulled back into what is obviously maybe not a functioning situation. So when I was going through my divorce, which was over a decade ago, I have a strong scientific background. I have a degree in chemical engineering, so I'm looking for research. And the research, one piece of research that was incredibly comforting for me, was that when it comes, because I typed in, and how do I make sure that my children come through this safe and well and unscarred? And I actually typed that in, and one of the pieces that came was that it doesn't take two parents, because that was my grief. Oh, my children, they need to have two parents. I must do everything I can to keep this marriage together. And the statistics show it takes one good parent. And I'd like to actually add more to that and say it takes one conscious parent, someone who has awareness, and someone who is able to look at the meta picture as well as what's going on in the day-to-day life. And it became essentially my mission to become that conscious parent. And by the way, this is not because my former partner, the father of my children, was not. It's not that at all. But conscious uncoupling works with just one person in that relationship. Very often you can't get both people coming together to uncouple with a degree of respect or a degree of graciousness. But if one of you is leading the divorce and the life after the divorce, then that is incredibly powerful. And so it means that you learn to do things like taking self-care as important, learning to perform the roles that your former partner used to take on that were not yours. But it's also getting the support that you need to heal yourself bodily, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually.
And
And
I have a question for you, Sonyan,
yeah.
actually. Um, my question is, um, at what stage should the woman be working with somebody like you to go through conscious uncoupling? So, for example, when there's of course there's so much trauma all around this situation of a divorce. It might be, like you said, there's, hopefully not, but sometimes there's domestic violence, sometimes there's infidelity, or sometimes things have just been fading for a long time, and it's just feeling like time. But at what stage? I mean, people don't plan a divorce,
No.
long in advance. It usually happens it always happens too suddenly. So yeah, so at what stage do you wish your clients would start to work with you, or to at least start to go through the conscious uncoupling process?
I would love to have them as soon as possible.
Yeah, yeah,
It's, as I said, we start to look for lawyer. We start to look for anyone to deal with our finances.
yeah.
We may start doing research on new schools or new homes and all of that. And we
Mm,
don't think of investing in somebody who's actually going to guide you and support you through this process. And by the way, it doesn't even matter if you're the instigator of the divorce, or if you're the one that's dealing with receiving this kind of news.
right.
Both of them, there can be conscious uncoupling, because we want to make sure. The reason why I keep saying these things about if it is at all possible, and I don't want to sound Pollyanna and unrealistic, those things that you say, infidelity, betrayal, someone can run away with the finances. I have coached one person who she was told that she's the marriage of, I think it was 15 years, plenty of time, and there were children involved. And her then husband was going to leave and move in and live with her best friend. And they are also business partners. Can you imagine? How do you deal with all of that? It's not just enough to have a good lawyer. A good lawyer is obviously fantastic, but they're not there to help you heal. And
Yeah,
they're
and
not there. Yeah.
yeah, and you're so. I mean, what you said about, okay, we think about getting a lawyer, financial person, whatever, but it's like the most important person in the entire experience is you, right? Like if you take care of your emotions, your mindset, your behavior, etc. It's like that's what allows the transition from the relationship to to the next stage be smoother, to be more graceful, to be less traumatic, etc. It's like it's the person. And it's like when you know you start hiring the lawyer, the financial, now it's like they are your warriors or something. Like it's becomes instantly a battle, instantly this war, and it's like it's terrible, right? So I would be, I don't know if it's possible, you know, we have only, you know, a few minutes left, but are you able to kind of give us a quick picture of that 5-step process of conscious uncoupling? I don't want to put you on the spot, and we weren't necessarily going to walk through all that, um, but I mean, just giving us a taste of it, so that people know, okay, conscious uncoupling is a 5-step program. What is it involved?
Right. So yeah, it is a 5-step program, and it's a one-on-one personal kind of system. So in the first one, we're looking at creating some steps so that you can learn to harness all of these powerful emotions, and so that you're going to have some strategies, you're going to have some language, and you're going to have some steps so that you can start to contain all of that. That's when we're starting to deal with the trauma of the situation, and what have we got to do. The second is where we start to move out of this victim consciousness. And this is where we begin to take responsibility for our part in this. No matter what, if infidelity has happened, the truth is that it took two people to contribute to what's gone on. And it can be an incredibly difficult and very sensitive thing to say to people, but it is absolutely crucial, George, because you can't change the other person. You can't make the past into something that is different. What you can do is take responsibility for the things that you can change, which is you, and which is anything in your agency, and what you think, what you believe, and what you say, and what you then choose to do moving forward for yourself and for your family is going to benefit you. And it can be so hard to think about being respectful and generous at a time when you're going through all of this pain and hurt and all of that, and you're totally justified for all of that. Of course you are. However, when you're in the midst of the divorce, you're not thinking ahead. And if there is a degree of generosity and respect now, when you've healed, you'll be able to look back at this and feel proud, because you've generated a structure that can evolve. Like, new partners are going to come into the relationship. Your children may be children now, but they're teenagers. They have different needs moving forward. So the third step is we break the habit. Heal Your Heart is the name of it. And this is where we start to go deep into the beliefs that we have that have caused us to think and act and speak in ways that we may want to look at in the future as changing. All of this is empowering and freeing for you. You can learn new skills and capacities even as you're going through a divorce. I know it sounds, wow, that's so super overwhelming, but I tell you, it's not. Thousands of people have done this. Then in the fourth step is when we start to look at, I was talking to you about contracts. How do we end this relationship with as much dignity and respect as possible? And what are our ways of co-parenting and communicating moving forward? So, for instance, many clients I have choose to just have a weekly email. Everything is then documented. They have a weekly email where they say, we discuss this, shall we discuss that? These are the joint expenses that are coming up, and there are now some really good apps where you can both be tracking all of these things, which makes life a lot easier. And there's a degree of separation, but they're still involved in the day-to-day lives of their children. And isn't that fantastic if the children don't have to choose? If they don't have to feel guilty when I'm with one parent, oh my gosh, what's the other one thinking? If they're not going through all of that, which is not really a future that I would hope most parents want for their children at all. But it can be hard when you're hurting to see that far ahead. And that's when you need someone in your corner to remind you, think about this in 5 years. Think about this in 10. What do you want your children to say about you as you went through this? And then the final step is creating your happily even after. So we're looking at, well, what is it that you want out of this life? And a lot of it, they come down, I just want peace. I just want happiness. And when you start to take care of yourself and your emotions, you can start to build that into your life and you have it. But also looking at maybe going back to college, working, or whatever it is that they want to do, they suddenly have this opportunity available. When you're not carrying the baggage and the debris, then you can also look at, well, okay, what do I want? This is a crossroads in my life. What do I want moving forward? So those are the 5 steps of conscious uncoupling, and they are the beginning. They're a fantastic framework, but obviously you can imagine you can go deep with these things. It transformed my life, and I'm still reaping the benefits of that, because 10 years on, I still have a relationship with my children's father that works well for us. And also the things to change. Conscious uncoupling can be when you are going through a divorce, but it could be later on. So some new dynamic comes into the situation. So your former partner now is getting married, and there's a new mum around, and how are you going to handle that, or how do you feel about that? It might be that you want to come back and revisit and come back into conscious uncoupling, because it can still work under those circumstances. And if you're stuck, the divorce is sometimes 5 years, it can be a little bit embarrassing to admit that you haven't moved on yet, but there's something in the way, and let's find out what that is, and then you can move forward with your life and find that happiness and peace and sense of safety and respect that you feel you don't have at the moment.
Yeah. I thank you so much. I mean, I hope those who are finding this quite interesting, you can of course rewind and hear those 5 steps again. And I love that you're bringing so much compassion into this, because usually, like I said, obviously divorce is not a pleasant situation for anybody, especially when there are children involved. And people, those people around us aren't they might want to help with the sort of all the things we're going through inside, but they don't know how to help, and maybe they're egging us on in terms of the anger or the resentment of the other person or whatever. And it's so this is so much of a healthier process, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, to work through. And so I want to thank you for doing the work and the compassion you bring to your clients in doing this. I imagine, you can work with people hopefully before the uncoupling happens, towards during the uncoupling, and even after the uncoupling. People who want to take the process much more with holistic view, with more healing in mind. So how should people reach out to you? What's the best way to kind of get started working with you?
The best way would be to go to my site, www.sonyawhitecoaching.com, and go over to the contact page and schedule a complimentary Find Your Way Forward session with me. And that's basically you and I getting together and having a conversation about what's going on in your life. And I will do what I can to give you some steps to go forward. It's a huge decision choosing a coach. I'm not trying to do a sales pitch there for you. It's just come and have a chat. Let's see whether there's anything I can do to help you in that time. And of course, if you wanted to take it further then and are inspired by the conscious uncoupling process, then I would absolutely love to work with you.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
I
go
want to
ahead.
just do a
Mm,
quick screen share, if I may.
mm,
I mean, you just recently updated your website and it's gorgeous.
thank
And I also wanted to just make sure people knew how to spell your name, Sonyan, even though
you.
it's pronounced Sonia. Okay. So there's an N at the end. So for those who are looking for it, and the Sonyan White. And yeah, so check it out. You have an ebook here. You have the conscious uncoupling process written out here. You have a blog, and cool. Yeah, so be sure to come and check out the website, sonyawhitecoaching.com, Sonyan whitecoaching.com. Sonia, thank you so much for your work, and I hope those who are going through something similar like this will find this healing and helpful. So anything else
Mm.
before we finish up?
No, it's a pleasure to be here and to share how I feel about this in terms of families. I think the world needs to take this a lot more seriously because so many divorces and different ways of having families. I think the statistics now are that we could go through 7 serial relationships in our lives. So, if that's becoming the norm, we need to know how to handle the endings of relationships with dignity and care for everybody involved.
It is a
Mm,
transformational experience, often a traumatic one, but it doesn't have to be, like you said, scarring. It can be a healing and growth experience,
mm.
and that's something you help so many people with. So thank you so much, and yeah, thanks for your work.
Okay, take care. Thank you.